when I saw my country actually suffering the consequences of socialist policies, I realized that women were becoming single mothers because the dad had to leave Venezuela in order to be able to send them money. Or women were the ones who started to become more victims of human trafficking because in their, desperation of leaving the country, they found themselves exposed to horrible circumstances of becoming a refugee. Or, just the fact that women end up getting pregnant, not being able to find baby formula, and shortly after giving birth of the baby, they had to bury their own babies, which is a tragedy.
Hello and welcome to the IEA YouTube channel. My name is Reem Ibrahim and I'm a Communications Officer and Linda Whetstone Scholar here at the IEA. I am absolutely delighted to be joined by the Ladies of Liberty Alliance for this week's episode of Breaking Barriers. I'm joined by Anna Rizo and also Holly Jean. I'm first of all going to be asking you guys a little bit about how you got involved in the Liberty movement. So I'll start with you, Anna. So it's my understanding you're from Venezuela. How did that sort of impact your journey towards the Liberty movement?
Well, I guess that when you come from a country with so many problems and that they start preaching about socialism since a very young age, and you start realizing, like, why is this so good, then my country is so bad, you need to start looking for, answers. So in my case, I started to discover libertarianism and the ideas of liberty because I got selected to participate in a seminar by Cato Institute. And that was a breaking point for me. Like, I was mind blown completely by the fact that these ideas could explain the situation in my country. Like, if you impose price controls, that leads to a scarcity. If you start expropriating businesses, that leads to a scarcity. And if you start printing money like a maniac, that leads to inflation. So then connecting the dots, I was like, this is what is happening. Socialism isn't good. So what can we do in order to overcome this? And that's when I started to get involved into the ideas of liberty.
That is incredible. And what about yourself, Holly?
Yes, for me, it was actually through my first economics course at a community college back in Orlando, Florida. So I was required to take my first economics course as an accounting major. And little did I know, I was stepping into a course where the professor was a hardcore libertarian. So it was the first time I've ever heard of this term. I was a teenager at the time. And slowly, little by little, I learned about free markets, limited government, individual liberty, and absolutely fell in love. I love studying the unintended consequences of government intervention in the economy, and that's really what pulled at my heartstrings. So shortly after the class ended, I asked my professor, where do I go to continue studying these ideas? So he sent me up to George Mason University. It's up in the DC area. They have the most free market oriented faculty anywhere in the world, and that's where I got my degree in economics. And shortly after graduating, that's actually when I found LOLA, and here I am now.
It's absolutely fantastic, both fantastic stories as well. So I just want to hear a little bit about why you think that liberty itself is sort of not necessarily a movement that a lot of women tend to be involved in anyway. I mean, we know, for example, the fact, I mean, you've got it on your banner behind there, that 55% of women prefer socialism over capitalism. Why do you think that women tend to favour socialist economic systems?
I think that it has to do with the way that the left or socialists sell these ideas. They try to sell it as if it is compassionate, as if that makes you more, to feel more empathy. And women, I believe we tend to be more empathetic than men. So logically, that makes us also more, vulnerable to fall into the socialist trap because that's exactly what it is. And another reason is because I believe that since women have faced so many social pressure in the past, we tend to feel more like to be likable, to be approved by society. And, standing up and saying, like, I don't agree with the popular vision of what socialism represents, it takes a lot of pressure. It takes a lot of, like, bravery. And that's why many women feel like, oh, I better stay here because this is my comfort zone. And that's why we need Lola, because we create that community and that space that we can tell you, you are not alone. There are other women who think like you.
Yeah, I completely agree. A huge problem is that socialist ideas are attractive, especially among women. And like the stat that you just said, 55% of women in the US actually, between the ages of 18 and 54, 55% of them say they prefer to live in a socialist system over a capitalist system. And when you look at where women are on the political spectrum, we know where they are. They're on the left. So, a huge reason for this that I've noticed is that socialism is demonstrated as the economics of compassion and morality. Meanwhile, capitalism is demonstrated as the economics of selfishness and greed. So it goes back to that mindset, what we see in the mainstream media, what we're taught in public school education, our liberal professors. So for us, it's really trying to help women understand why the ideas of individual liberty, limited government, and free markets work for them. Not more government, not socialism.
I think that's absolutely right. And when you look at the long history of women's oppression, really it has been at the hands of state oppressors, the state apparatus, that have sort of allowed women to become this sort of oppressed minority. And I think that fundamentally, when it comes to the way that we frame these ideas of capitalism, free markets, individual liberty, the way that we frame these ideas is really quite important. And that's how we get more women involved in the movement. So for both of you yourself, I mean, what experiences have you had with women when you've sort of been trying to get them onto the LOLA chapters and get them onto the LOLA programs? How have you sort of found women's reactions to these ideas?
Well, many women who still believe in socialism, or they do it based on this, monopoly of compassion that socialism sells. But also, many of them have never lived in a socialist system. Women who live under a socialist system and realize they are the one dealing with the worst part of it, they realize like this is not good for me. That was my case. When I saw my country actually suffering the consequences of socialist policies, I realized that women were becoming single mothers because the dad had to leave Venezuela in order to be able to send them money. Or women were the ones who started to become more victims of human trafficking because in their, desperation of leaving the country, they found themselves exposed to horrible circumstances of becoming a refugee. Or, just the fact that women end up getting pregnant, not being able to find baby formula, and shortly after giving birth of the baby, they had to bury their own babies, which is a tragedy. So socialism, in the long run, it doesn't help women at all. It actually makes them even more vulnerable. And I think that's the way that I approach it when someone asks me, like, how come you're an immigrant and a woman and you are supporting these right wing ideas that are not even right wing, in my opinion? But, literally, it comes down to that, to my own experience and what I saw.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What I would add on to that as well is that with women, especially, if we want to get them engaged and actually on our side with the ideas, it's important to understand there was recently a neuroscience study that showed us that when we're teaching a new idea to people, if that idea is not attached with feelings and emotion and passion, that idea is not going to stick. So that's sort of the approach that we take. We want to teach these ideas on an empathetic level. We want to have compassion. We want to actually listen and understand. And that's something that you don't get with many libertarians. I think we're very knowledgeable on the economic or academic standpoint and talking about Mises and Hayek. And yes, we love these figures. But at the end of the day, the average regular person working more than 40 hours a week, still living in poverty, you can't just tell them capitalism is going to help you prosper. You really need to understand their situation. You really need to put yourself in their shoes and actually have conversations with them instead of what you see in the mainstream media today is just cancel culture, tearing people down, smearing each other if we don't agree. So we really want to take the opposite approach and actually have conversations, put ourselves in their shoes, and help them understand why the ideas of liberty, less government intervention in the economy, especially when people want to start up small businesses, for example, making it easy for them to make their own choices in life that can help them grow and succeed. So I think that's a huge part of it, just being empathetic, really. it just goes a long way.
How do you think sort of fundamentally we can sort of allow women to understand a lot of these Austrian economic ideas, or understand the way that the price mechanism works, understand quantitative easing, understand these ideas that central banks then obviously cause a lot of those problems when it comes to the money supply. A lot of these ideas tend to be quite far removed from a lot of women. How do you think, in your expert opinion, we can sort of better actually communicate those ideas?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think at the root of it, it's having compassion and understanding where people are coming from, like I was mentioning before. And honestly, it all depends. It all depends on what angle or what part of the situation today that we're trying to tackle, whether we're trying to help people understand the real reason for inflation or trying to help people understand, like, recently in the US we had the soaring prices of eggs, so understanding like how the egg market works or why gas prices are so high. So really helping them understand how government is at the core of many of the issues that we face in today's world and today's economy, and helping them understand that so much government intervention, or even looking at economic policy or public policy with the eyes of, oh, this isn't fair. Let's make a new law or rule or policy to govern this, and helping them understand what actually are the consequences of these actions that we're trying to call for. Because I believe that they have the best intentions, but we know that intentions don't equal results. So really helping women understand the root of things instead of just, telling them that they're wrong or arguing with them or telling them that they're stupid, helping them understand, okay, pulling them back to the main issue, the root of the problem, and meeting them there.
Absolutely love that answer. Thank you for that, Holly. And Anna, so you're from Venezuela, and obviously you've had that experience, that first-hand experience of what a socialist government, socialist economy, authoritarian government can really, really have, especially on those individuals and, of course, on women. A lot of people will then sort of come back to that and say, well, Venezuela's socialism wasn't real socialism. What would you say to, how would you respond to that?
Well, I will say that then Cuba wasn't real communism, that Cambodia wasn't real communism, that North Korea isn't, like, it's not only about Venezuela, it's about history and all the examples that we have of socialist and communist governance that they go bad. And I think one of the key things that we can do is to listen to people and to also give a voice to people that has survived these regimes. So right now I'm also a contributor in a Canadian organization that is called Second Street. And one of the things they do is that they go for Canadians who have lived or that come also from these countries, and they ask questions and they give them a voice and a platform. And these people, they come from Nicaragua, Cuba. They have lived it in Cambodia during the Khmer Rouge, all these sort of things, and they express their views and they say, you know what, this happened and this is what caused this, and you see the correlation. You see, like, oh, it's the same measures or similar measures, and what a surprise that they have similar outcomes, and it's not the ones that they told you, because it all starts with a populist leader saying this and selling you these ideas as the solutions. But the reality, like Holly said, intentions, they don't translate to good outcomes. I think it was Milton Friedman the one says that you need to evaluate a public policy based in the results, not in the intentions, and that's why socialism fails in the end of the day.
That's a fantastic answer. I think that when it comes to the intentions behind a lot of these policy initiatives, generally speaking, I mean, I'd like to think that most people in government, most policymakers, do have the nation's best interests at heart. Now, those outcomes obviously don't end up being that way. And we see that with a lot of these interventionist governments, a lot of these authoritarian governments, not only are our civil liberties breached, or we don't get sound money anymore, or the money that we have in our own pockets ends up being worth less because of inflation. A lot of these ideas come from these emotive arguments, and that's why I think that a lot of women, generally speaking, don't sort of take to libertarian ideas or take to these liberty ideas. So, what would you both say to a woman who is on the left, who is unsure about her position on the left and is considering exploring the way that the liberty movement works, exploring LOLA potentially? What would you say to a socialist woman?
Well, to a socialist woman, I would say, like, I can give her my apartment in Venezuela and go to live there. She will see it herself for sure. No, like, honestly, like, I think that one of the best ways that I sell these ideas to women is by telling the experiences that I saw in my own country, how it works in the long run. And many of them, they will never agree in the beginning because no one agrees in the beginning once they are like very like into an ideology, but they start like thinking about it, or they start doubting about it. And in the case of Canada, something that happened that was very interesting is that during COVID, the government became like very, like crazy. They started to impose a lot of things, including mandating vaccines to pregnant women, and some of them even faced terminations in their offices, which was crazy. And they start realizing like this is what big government can do. If they can do this, what can they do next? So in the end of the day, they start realizing. And the way that I also portray Lola is, Lola is not only about politics. Lola is not only about economics. We are not gonna solve the world issues raising a book of Milton Friedman. Like that's not gonna be the ultimate solution. And we also do different activities. For example, one of the activities that we did is self-defense classes. So let's because women, they are most of we are the victims of harassment, street harassment, and this sort of things. So learning essentials of how to defend yourself, that's also a way of empowering women. So that's what Lola is about. It's about community of empowering women, and to also spread the ideas of liberty, because liberty helps women.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I would also add on to that. For me, the biggest thing that I would tell them is don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it coming from a libertarian woman sitting here, or Anna's word for it. Like, on the other side, don't take your liberal professor's word for it. Like, do the work yourself. Actually read, investigate, ask questions, because that's something that we're not teaching today's generation, which is so sad. We're not taught to question anything, especially for our liberal professors. We're supposed to just agree with them. And if we actually stand up to them or ask questions, we can be canceled or shut down or put on social media and tear down. So I would just say, don't be afraid to think for yourself. Read Adam Smith, read Hayek, read Mises, read Ayn Rand, and come to the realization of these ideas yourself, but understand and know both sides. Because yes, I've read Hayek and Smith, but guess what? I've also read Karl Marx. You have to understand the other side. Otherwise, you really won't be rooted and saturated in the ideas. Know what you're standing for.
Yeah, I definitely think that reading Karl Marx, reading other left-wing economists, or even sort of social theorists is really important. I was reading Chomsky the other day, for example. Hearing these ideas means that you're better equipped to actually counteract them when it comes to these public debates and when it comes to the public discourse. I think that being able to communicate those ideas within that sort of public arena is really important, and actually understanding the other side, understanding why people are gravitated towards Marx, why they gravitated towards social theorists like Noam Chomsky, because they understand that those ideas are emotive, and they do use those emotive arguments in order to actually be able to communicate them to women, but also to everyone across the world. I think it's interesting that both of you have had very different experiences yourselves when it comes to authoritarian governments and authoritarian regimes, and yet you both have sort of come to the conclusion that actually the libertarian movement is the way forward, that liberty, that individual liberty, that property rights, those ideas are really what will take the world forward. And I think that that's particularly interesting. You both had different experiences as well. Have you spoken to other women that have also had different experiences, that have come to the same conclusions that you have?
Well, in my case, many of the members of Ladies of Liberty Alliance in Canada come from countries that have experienced similar struggles. So, for example, one of our members, she is a New Yorker who was so leftist in the beginning that she was boycotting the lectures of Jordan Peterson in the University of Toronto. So she struggled with COVID when the Justin Trudeau government started to impose all these vaccine mandates and all these lockdown measures. And then she started thinking by herself, like Holly said here, and she realized that, like, this is not working on my favor. Like, what is going on? And then she started to question with her woke friends. Her woke friends tried to cancel her. And then she started to realize that this is not good, this doesn't feel good. And then she found Lola through social media, and she reached out and she was like, I want to join Lola. I want to go to your events. I want to help you. Like, she felt like this is the community that I can find support. And that's what Lola is about. Other members come from Romania. Other members come from China. Like, places where people have a struggle to find freedom. Places like China that they don't have freedom, at least political freedom at all. And, it comes down to that. It comes down to meeting other women who know your struggle.
Yeah, I would add on to that. Just seeing different women come from different, what we have is different LOLA regions. So seeing women come from different places throughout Europe, for example, different places throughout Africa, Asia, Latin America, the US, seeing these women really understand what it means to live in socialism, how much poverty and how much hurt and suffering that causes their families themselves, and how much they just value that taste for freedom. I know a lot of times for me, I get frustrated with, what's happening in the economic or political party in the US, but then I talk to these women all across the globe and see that they're fighting for basic freedoms, their basic liberties that I take for granted every single day. And I think all of us being united in that, like getting to see different perspectives and getting to see different countries. Like, I complain all the time about how much my government taxes me, and I really don't make that much money. And I'm like, you're taxing me how much money? And I'm really not making that much. But then I hear from people like Anna, who's in Canada, and they're taking like half of their income over there. So, it makes me more understanding, more appreciative, and really having each other to hear like the different stories and situations that we would never otherwise have interacted with because of this Lola community.
Thank you, Holly. That made me feel good about my tax situation.
Tax is bad. Makes us sad. I think what's interesting about that is that, of course, the liberty movement itself has sort of gotten to different scales across the globe. In the United Kingdom, we'll be arguing about how the Bank of England continues to increase the money supply, which obviously has resulted in the inflation that we're seeing at the moment. This has been the case across the world. In the United States, there are various different issues when it comes to individual liberty and property rights, but and yet we still have a very different perspective on what that liberty movement actually looks like. When you're in a state that is effectively socialist, effectively authoritarian, the liberty movement looks very different. And it is an incredible privilege that we're able to even have this conversation here at the moment, right? For us to be able to openly discuss these ideas, for me to, my family is sort of half Egyptian, half Moroccan, being able to come from those countries where, of course, they again have incredible censorship laws and incredible amounts of authoritarianism when it comes to your individual liberties. And yet, here we are today being able to have this open conversation, open discourse. So I think that it's also about valuing the liberty that we do have within that moment as well. So at the moment, we are in the United States. We're in Phoenix, Arizona, for a conference with the Objective Standard Institute. And we are sort of discussing these ideas of objectivism, which was, of course, the philosophy of Ayn Rand. Do you think there are any other sort of liberal women or libertarian women that you think that we should be looking at and highlighting?
Well, we have a couple of libertarian women. For example, one of my favorite speakers in Latin America is Gloria Alvarez. And one of the reasons is because I will never forget her speech in Spain, where she stood up and she talked against populism. And she did something that, well, in my opinion, is what many other libertarians should be doing. She simplified information. She made, in that speech, she was able to communicate libertarian ideas in a simple way. And what I found amazing is that friends that are not even involved into libertarianism, like this is people that don't even know who Mrs. is, for example, they were sharing her video. They were like, this is great. And I was like, this is what I follow. It's like, this is what we should be doing. So people like Gloria Alvarez, they're inspiring on that sense. And in my opinion, well, she's part of the LOLA Speakers Bureau, which is great. And yeah, that in my opinion is a great example.
Yes, definitely. Lola has a couple of amazing libertarian women and men, but the libertarian women that we have on our advisory board are great. One that she already mentioned, Gloria. We also have Antonella Marty, Maggette Wade, and also I would say our Lola Speakers Bureau as well. We really try to highlight women who know how to speak on the ideas of liberty on a variety of issues, and we're also training up our chapter leaders right now to be speakers. So we're trying to train them, invest in them. Ana was recently added. We had another chapter leader who's from Uruguay who's recently added. So we're really trying to train and invest in, the next libertarian woman that you should be following.
Absolutely love that answer. Invest in the future. We've got incredible amounts of women across the globe that will, of course, carry the liberty movement themselves as well, which I think is incredibly important. We've got to be able to invest in the future. And without women, the liberty movement would, of course, fail. We're half the population across the globe. If women themselves are not arguing for these ideas and not believing in these ideas, then the liberty movement itself would fail. And unfortunately, I think that a lot of authoritarian governments themselves would take that over. Now, just thinking about women themselves in particular, there is, of course, the other side of the coin, which is the more leftist feminist movement, which argues for affirmative action, which argues for more government in various different areas of our lives. Could you tell me, sort of in a very short answer, why you think that the leftist feminist movement is wrong?
The leftist movement is wrong in the sense that they approach ideas and policies that are in the long term they harm women. One example is, for example, this law that was approved in Spain, where women they can get a break from their job if they have their period and they have menstrual pain. And everyone was like, yay, this is a great initiative. And one of our directors from Brazil, she actually wrote a letter like, no, this is not great, because what it's going to cost in the long term is that the hiring manager will consider like, well, if we hire a woman, then, she's going to take more breaks. She's going to take more breaks. So why I'm going to hire her for a, higher position that usually involves more responsibility and more time, when she's going to take a break every while and then because, oh, I have my period, I'm in pain. Like, they might be inclined to hire men more. So it's like looking, again, it's not about intention. It's about looking at the bigger picture and how these solutions can actually impact women.
Oh man, I mean, there's so many things to address with the modern feminist movement of today. What I would say, one of the biggest things is the problem with looking at people as a group of people, like as a collective, instead of looking at people as individuals. I think today, just looking at it, especially among men, like looking at it as a zero-sum game. Like if a man gains, it means that we are losing. And, just really understanding individuals and how hard work and, working hard can help you succeed. And it doesn't make you bad based on the color of your skin, based on your race. So I would really say that just looking at people as individuals, I don't think it's a hard thing to do, and more of us should do it.
It is absolutely fantastic. Thank you to both of you for joining me today on the IEA's YouTube channel. That was a fantastic conversation. I think that both of you are clearly fantastic women in the liberty movement and clearly add so much to this movement. We need more of us, I think. Yeah. More of us in the liberty movement ourselves. Thank you so much for watching on the IEA's YouTube channel. If you like videos like this and you'd like to see more, hit the subscribe button and you can see the link of our Patreon in the description below. Thank you.
Well, if you enjoyed that conversation, why not watch one of these other videos? And while you're here, remember to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss out on a single IEA broadcast.